Hi, welcome everybody. I'm Waqas Haque, fellow U Chicago. Welcome to our latest episode of our Oncology Data Advisor podcast with our technology and startup theme, joined by our guest today from Ontada, Dr. Wanmei. It's nice to connect.
Nice to connect with you too, Waqas.
Yeah. And before we start with the interview and asking you sort of about your really interesting background in policy, industry, and academia, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do right now.
Sure. I have been in the uh, intersections between healthcare, data, analytic, and AI throughout my career. From the very beginning, my PhD degrees is in reading people's mind. I use a lot of AI algorithms along with sensors
Mhm.
to put it on top of the scalp, so like EEG and MEG, to try to figure out which part of the brain is the working memory. Fast forward, I have been working on a number of health IT as well as real world evidence research role in both healthcare system as well as pharmaceutical company. Most recently, I lead a team of data informatics, data scientists, and product management at Ontada, where we have collectively achieved a very monumental effort on processing a large scale of data in a very sustainable manner and very large scale to operate. So yeah, so we would love to share with the audience more about it.
Yeah, that's really exciting to hear. We've had a lot of guests from all different kinds of backgrounds, sort of working at the intersection of data science and oncology. So, what makes Ontada's approach to using AI unique and innovative?
Sure. So can I maybe need to provide some backgrounds of
Yeah.
Ontada so that you will see that why this solution is innovative. So Ontada is one of the business units within the McKesson Corporation. We are in the oncology ecosystem along with a number of sister organizations together to help fight against cancer. For Ontada, we develop and manage the class number one rated electronic health record system for medical oncologists. It's called the iKnowMed EHR.
Hmm.
We have about 2 to 3,000 providers are using the iKnowMed EHR daily to treat our patients, which is translated to about 1.4 million annual patients coming to our practice to seek help. And
Hmm.
then, and because of the arrangements with the practice, we also have the data right to help the practice to use this data in a de-identifiable format to help pharmaceutical to advance its own R&D, such as clinical trial recruitment, as well
Hmm.
as real-world evidence generation. So, where's AI comes from, right? You may have a question like, oh, you have the electronic medical record system, you control like the end to end, like what is the problem? So we had a long time thought that by just using the structured data of the EMR is sufficient to address a number of use cases. Unfortunately, that is not the reality.
Hmm.
In the structured data, we have relatively thin information about the longitudinal patient records. That is based on two main reasons behind that. One is because of the clinical workflows,
Hmm.
physicians like to document using notes, progress notes,
Hmm.
very likely. And then second reason behind that is because our physicians are medical oncologists. And when when an oncology cancer patient, right, come to seek help, they just do not like in their patient journey, right? Medical oncology is only one part of the interaction, right? There are surgeons, there are molecular diagnostic labs, there are radiologists, right? All of these services will originate different types of record. And a lot of time they fax in or upload in or scan in a large corpus of unstructured documents for the patient. So that is why that Ontada is sitting on top of 150 million documents for the population that we help manage. And that is where AI shined because if solely utilize manual abstraction is not scalable solution to address that, and using AI, that is how we innovate from there.
Yeah, no, thanks for sharing all the insights. I definitely think with the EHR, one of the challenges that we have is there's a lot of unstructured data. So having access to millions of records and documents and patient notes is just really important, trying to figure out how the best way to sort of collate that information into something that's usable and actionable. So yeah, definitely agree with everything you're saying there. When you talk about sort of, using AI, and how do you kind of measure the impact of data extraction on patient outcomes, and maybe share an example or success story of this if you can.
Yeah, sure. Happy to share about that. So yeah, in the past year or so, we have developed close to 100 models
Hmm.
to extract core clinical insight uh, from those unstructured documents. For example, we have date of initial diagnosis, which is commonly not documented in the structure form, staging, histology, oral medication, surgery, the one that I mentioned before, right? Because they're outside service, they do not come in the structure form natively. So we develop about close to 100 data models now, and all our model has been through rigorous testing and validations based on a reasonable size of corpus that has been manually annotated by our clinical nurse. So we have really strong ground truth to start with to validate our model's accuracy. And once the model meets the accuracy, we put that into the production use. So talking about the impact of this work, we have been using the data for a number of areas, including helping our practice to reduce the burden of documentation entry. So that thing about that, right, the practice can spend more time. The clinician can spend more time with the patient rather than taking up information and document that into the EHR. And one of the very successful use case that we did in the past month is that we utilize this enriched data set to fulfill our Ontada's pledge to the White House Cancer Moonshot Initiative, where we agree on using a highly standardized format to submit the enhancing oncology models patients for at least one practice. In this case, we collaborate with both U.S. Oncologist Network, U.S. Oncology Network, as well as Compass Oncology. We submit the data in this using the AI enriched data, and of course, we also let the front office, the clinical nurse at the practice to review those information before submission. And from our analysis, we significantly improve the productivity of the nurse who are tasked to do these data submissions. So really simplify the submission, have a much higher completion rate of the data. So the White House Cancer Moonshot Project, which is partnership with the Center for Medicare and Medicaid, the requirement is 90% complete. And utilizing our technology, we are able to meet 98% completion rate of the data to go into the CMS. So yeah, so this really help simplify the workflow and helping the provider to reduce the documentation burden while fulfilling their contractual agreements with the payer side.
Okay, got it. So you talked about sort of reducing the documentation burden and all the dozens and hundreds of models that are being used to really do that. So as we kind of see more updates and advancements in some of our AI technologies, like in Azure AI, OpenAI, how do you think that's going to kind of shape the collaboration with Microsoft?
Yeah, so that's a good question. We have been developing the model in both using open source model as well as Azure OpenAI subscriptions. So that was where the 100 or so model was developed based off from. So after we develop the model, I mentioned to you that we always validate the model, making sure that it has good sensitivity as well as recall. And then we will inference on the large corpus of documents. We also periodically kick back some of the documents review the result to see whether the AI is still accurate. But what is the collaboration with Microsoft Azure is that when we have the model meeting the accuracy, when we're about to inference into these large corpus, 150 million documents, we see that we are falling short on the throughput. Our original estimate using I would say that they call it the pay-as-you-go or PTU models of Azure OpenAI service will easily take 6 to 7 months of the time to really run through these 150 million documents, which is not meeting the timeline, the business requirement that we face. So we constructively challenge Microsoft team that, hey, can you give us something with higher throughput? And at the same time, since our use case is not a real-time use case, we can trade off a little bit on the response time. So we can wait for a couple hours to get the response back, but as long as we have a really high throughput. So these constructive challenge really benefits these us and as well as Microsoft. They took our requirements and put together a new service offering called Microsoft Azure AI Batch. What it does is that instead of sending one request at a time, it allows user to package a large set of requests. In our case, is easily 20,000 to 60,000 requests within one submission. And the service level agreement is 24 hours, but most of the time that it is 1 to 2 hours, we get it back the answer. And another added benefit is that is a 50% cost compared to the regular Azure OpenAI subscription service. So yes, so really benefit this collaboration, but to be able to now inference these 150 million documents in only 3 weeks. So it substantially reduced the time.
Got it. No, thanks for sharing that. And kind of just shifting gears, and you talked about reducing time, talking about all the different models that are being used at the same time to extract data. I think human nature, I think in nature, we see a really good job of how this is done, right? Like the human cell, when it replicates, it does it really fast, but then it has all the polymerases and all the different ways to make sure that it's still accurate, right? Because otherwise you're going to have mutations and have a lot of problems downstream of that. But obviously, with AI, we're still trying to, work on that and trying to, make it as good. So how do you kind of balance that need for processing data really fast and getting things out, and also having good quality of data while also being accurate and like with the models you guys are using?
Absolutely. So yeah, because that when we look at the accuracy, we look at it from the end-to-end angle, right? The model is one part of it. We also need to be very thoughtful that do we have processed all the documents or any document inadvertently being missed, right? In that case, it's not the model, it's the model just cannot even see the document. So we have been going through like dissect different parts of the whole pipeline to make sure that the accuracy pertain across the end-to-end chain. Another point that I want to highlight is that I mentioned earlier about these human manually abstracted data as the ground truth. That itself actually is a pretty challenging thing to produce. What I would say is that because of the complexity of the expressions and the complexity of the oncology practice, right, itself, in order to get the high quality ground truth in the process, we use at least 2 clinical nurses to follow the same abstraction guideline. So they independently abstracting that, and then we look at the comparison between them and making sure that we have a agreement on that information. And when it's not agreed, we bring in a third person, clinical nurse, more senior usually, to break the tie so that we have these high quality manually abstracted data to help us to validate the judge whether the models is accurate or not. And then once that is our initial model development validation phase. And then post deployment, we also select a small set of documents over time to let our clinical nurse to review that to ensure that there's no drift in terms of the data and things like that. And if it does, we go back to our model update status, so that to ensure that now the new model is more accurate or fit into the trend of the data.
So, you talked a lot about all the different ways that you all are sort of processing the data. And of course, in oncology, there's so many different ways that AI is being used, from, reducing documentation burden to automating notes to helping the patient work stream to helping patients find clinical trials at an advanced stage of their cancer. So looking ahead, what kind of potential use cases for AI in oncology really excite you the most beyond data extraction?
Yes, that's a good question. So yes, so definitely data extraction, reducing the documentation burden is, I would say, those are the relatively low risk use case, right? Once you introduce something so transformational technology into the clinical practice, is usually smart to start with the low risk use case to prove the technology. But what I can see is that going forward, there are more with the reasoning capability of
Uh-huh.
the large language model continue to improve. I see that a number of more advanced clinical use case will be helped with these more advanced AI reasoning. For example, now that we have the structured data, unstructured data, patient-reported data, sensor, right? It's just a huge multimodal data. A human, no matter how many years of school you go to, is just not likely to be able to make sense of them in a timely manner. Yeah. So using AI, I can see that it can do the multimodal information and combining with external literature as well as a payer policy, right? It can also in more real time and the benefits, right, these patients have, so that to figure out what are the best combining safety, efficacy, and cost, right, all into play, right? Because the patient also have a particular insurance policy, right? What is the best options, next best treatment options for the patient? So that's what I see as going to be very helpful. Another area is risk predictions, where with a lot of this multimodal data, we can sift through these informations. Previously, we kind of constrained on the structured data, but now that we have these unstructured capability, then we can sift through a omnium channel information about the patients to assess, right, the risk of the patient and have that timely interventions, so that we can avoid some of the unnecessary complexity that can be prevented earlier.
Thanks for sharing your insights today and for answering all the questions. All the best with the work you're doing, and look forward to seeing what else Ontada is able to achieve.
Thank you. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Take care.
Bye.